Hey, I'm Benjamin Mathis. I'm the founder of Urban Confessional, a free listening movement. We stand on street corners in about 50 different countries around the world, and we hold signs that say free listening. And we just let people say whatever it is they want to say, and we listen. Listening is a weird experience. It's kind of strange, and it's a little bit scary because you never know what anybody's going to say. And that's what this podcast is all about. This is Heard, honest conversations on what it means to be alive. Every single week, I'm going to bring you a new guest, and we deep dive, and I never know what's actually going to happen. All I know is it's going to be honest, it's going to be open, and we're going to get to the root of what it means to be alive and what it means to be human in this world today. We're going to hear stories of people who've been at the highest of highs and at the lowest of lows, and we're going to find out what it means to navigate through all of this chaos. Speaking of chaos, let me tell you what it was like the first time I went free listening. First time I went free listening, I held my free listening sign, and a girl walked up to me. She's probably 12, 13, something like that. She had a big smile on her face, and she said, "Today I'm celebrating 75 days free." And I said, "Well, this is great. 75 days free from what?" And she said, 75 days free from cutting myself. And she rolled up her sleeves, and her arms were scarred like I have never seen before. You never know what's really going on with somebody. Sometimes our exteriors are perfect. Sometimes it looks like we've got everything together. And the inside, it's a mess. Well, our first guest knows a little bit about what it means to be a mess. He also knows a little bit about what it means to be on the top. He was the drummer of a band called Good Charlotte. They were huge, one of the biggest bands in the world, and he's played on some of the biggest stages and with some of the greatest musicians ever. His name is Chris Wilson, and as high as he's been just as low. He'll tell us some stories today that gave me chills. He'll tell us about withdrawals and things that haunt him still today. He's got a lot of energy. Chaotic is the word that comes to mind because that's a word that he uses a lot. This is one of the most fascinating and introspective and entertaining conversations I have ever had in my life. And I'll tell you right now, I have to warn you, he uses a whole lot of language. There's a lot of bad words here, but what do you expect from a rock star? And what do you expect from an honest conversation? Sometimes when we open up, we speak in ways that reflect exactly how we feel. And sometimes that language isn't what we always say in what we might call polite society. So I apologize to my mom, and if my grandmother's listening, I'm sorry about this. But this is how real people talk, and these are the things that real people talk about. This is Heard, honest conversations on what it means to be alive. This is Chris Wilson. I hope you enjoy. Okay, here we go. This is Chris Wilson. Christopher, does it matter to you?
It doesn't matter to me.
For me, I'm Ben, but
my
I'm
Christian name I prefer.
Your Christian?
No.
Don't tell me about my Christian name, my given name, what I was christened with.
Just Chris is fine.
Christopher
was when I get in trouble. But
Christopher's when you get in trouble.
Maybe I'm in. Say some stuff will get me in trouble. So
we'll have to call you Christopher when you get in
let's
trouble. Okay. Yeah, for me, my dad's name is Ben. My name was Benjamin. So if my mom's in the room, it's got to be Benjamin, the whole thing, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but if everybody, I don't care what people call me. Then I started playing Ultimate Frisbee, and you can't say a 4-syllable name while you're playing Frisbee.
You can.
Well, you can, but it takes too long, and by then it's all over, right? So, look, I'm really thrilled that you're here. You have such an incredible story, and to set the context here, tell us where you're from, what you do. Who are you?
Who am I? My name is Christopher Ryan Wilson, born May 5th, 1981. I'm a Taurus. I don't know if that even fucking matters. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. Born and raised there. I live in North Hollywood now. I own a juice bar.
Right, that's how I know you.
Yes.
Because I'm a juice addict.
You come into my spot.
Yeah.
Jesus, who the hell am I now? I'm still figuring that out, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, this is... When I was a kid, I did not envision at all. This was never a thought in my entire life.
To run a juice
Yeah,
bar?
well, who I am now, essentially. That's just what I've kind of developed into over the years. So to answer that, I don't even really know.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring that out. There's certain aspects that, yes, I know who I am, but the ever-evolving state of man in general and where we're at in society and who I am and what I want to represent to this world and what mark that I want to leave, essentially, it's changing all the time. And that's so I don't even really know how to answer that. Like, that's whatever that means.
Wow. No, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
You said there are some parts of you that you do understand? Or
yeah, there's the parts of me that got me to where I'm at and who I was before and kind of the stuff that I idolized as a kid. But even now, the things that I looked up to before and stuff that I idolized and that I loved are no longer necessarily serving me. So that's where I'm at. Like, it's created... Oh, I'm just touching the table.
Yeah, that's what that noise was, everybody. It was table noise.
Yeah, so it's not really like serving me, and I'm trying to figure out
what were those things. What were those things?
The things beforehand, just music in general. That was all that really mattered to me as a kid. I was the person, had all sorts of amazing friends. Like, grew up in a very loving community in general. Grew up in a very insane kind of Mormon community. Like, they're great, unbelievably incredible human beings, but they just breed this very closed-minded, like, just thought process in general. It's a bubble that's Pleasantville, and it's not entirely accurate for the rest of the world. And I knew that as a kid, but still kind of had to do it. My parents are great, loving, honorable human beings, did the best with the knowledge and the information they had provided to them at that moment, but ultimately trying to raise like a typical cookie-cutter Mormon kid, and I never wanted to be that. I had no desire to go on.
And I have to, for everybody listening... I'm looking at a guy with neck tattoos. This is not, okay. How many tattoos do you have, this cookie-cutter Mormon race?
No, I don't. I have no idea.
You have too many to count.
Probably like 50.
50.
Somewhere around there.
What I see, and they're all colored tattoos, and you have them on either side of your neck.
That's just why... It's funny because as a kid, I loved tattoos. I was always very drawn towards that. I was always drawn towards things that I wasn't supposed to like. Like, that's essentially how it worked. I mean, granted, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Like, my parents tried to be very protective. Like I said, they did the best they could. But ultimately, I went towards things that mattered to me. And when I started to see people, like, I loved punk rock. Those are part of the things I idolized. Like, I grew up listening to, funny enough, like, I idolized Blink-182, NoFX, Green Day, MXPX, The Refused, Rage Against the Machine, Pantera, Nirvana, Foo Fighters. That's all I gave a fuck about. There was nothing else. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I was the kid that didn't know how to get girls. I didn't know how to communicate with women. I was very insecure with myself growing up. It was a thing that was my coping mechanism for life. I didn't like the family that I grew up in. I didn't like the environment that I was in. I was fortunate. I didn't grow up in some shitty place by any means. They were loving, amazing human beings, but my parents tried to protect me from everything, which ultimately made me rebel above and beyond. And first time I ever smoked weed and drank was 15 years old.
Wow.
When I eventually got busted, my mom acted like I was the only person that had ever done that and made that decision, called all of the parents. All of my friends got fucked over. Like, that was the type of parents I grew up around. My mom was a drug and alcohol rehabilitation nurse, so that's her life legacy. So the fact that her child had chosen that was like this horrible thing, especially growing up in a community where everyone puts these bullshit smiles on and pretends like everything's okay and it's all happy, hunky-dory, all is well in Pleasantville, and it wasn't. Like, behind the scenes, essentially, most of the homes probably had a form of chaos, but they didn't really talk about it because you have to project the image of, like, everything's great. You go sit in sacrament meeting, and you kind of just, I don't know, like, I don't know how much people really loved being there. I think they loved the idea, but it was something that just didn't resonate with me, and I never wanted to do it, and I would get grounded if I didn't go to church. So I grew up resenting it. I hated it. I did not want to be a part of it at all, and I had no choice. The people that were around me, though, like, that was the catch-22, was they were really loving, kind-hearted people,
right?
And they meant well, but they try to not really force, but push you into a direction that they feel is in your best interest when they don't really know who you are, and they're trying to stamp out anything that produces individuality. They want, like, the same old shit. You're going to end up being like, okay, you grow up to be 18, you go on a mission, you get sent to wherever you're going to be, you go out, experience life. In that time frame, like, the girl that's supposed to be for you is kind of conducting herself in a way to where she's preparing for your return. You come back, you get married, but ultimately, a large percentage of these kids that I saw that went off on missions, the girls that they were with at that point, a lot of them got married to other dudes while the guys were out.
Oh,
and end up having
man.
children. So they would return or get like some letter only to find out that like this person that they were waiting, that they essentially were going out for to be another part of like God's plan and just help procreate and usher in a new era of Mormonism, they would kind of get let down. And a lot of people it worked great for. Other people I saw, like I had friends come home early off of missions. I had friends get mugged on missions. And they got to see the darker aspect of life in general and shit that's real. Not the like cookie cutter fairy tale, as long as you're just nice to everybody, everything goes perfectly fine. Like, it's a lie that's sold. And like as long as you're a good person, no. My father got fucked over by like greedy just people in his family and just tried to take the high road and be the nice person in general. And I've watched that where you just let people like step all over you to a certain degree. He's an amazing human being, but I'm frustrated with the fact that I embody the same spirit that he does to a certain degree. When he means well, but ultimately he will do anything for anybody else and he will put his own needs on the side. And that's what that religion kind of teaches to a certain degree. And he's an amazing person and I love him dearly and I'm thankful that I have that part of myself, but I also have to learn these are the things the church doesn't really teach you. Is how to stand up for yourself and not get walked all over and not how to just sit there and people please. And do that at all times because shit doesn't work out. That's just the reality. Like life in general, it doesn't just work out perfectly, I should say. Like you're going to have to go through chaotic circumstances in order to learn. That's the only way you do learn, is going through dramatic, difficult circumstances that you did not foresee, and it's not going to come in the form in which you had hoped, and you're going to be crushed, and then you're going to figure out a way of how you like pull yourself out of that, and that's how you learn because no one can tell anybody anything. We're all aimlessly wandering on this planet with limited information based around our own perception of how the fuck we think life is supposed to be. And it's nice to have like mentors who can give you advice, but ultimately no one can really tell you shit because your experiences are not going to be that. And every experience that you have is brand new and cannot be related to anything else. Therefore, it's all subjective. And I didn't know that growing up. And I've just learned a lot of very difficult things through the hardest shit. And I'm thankful, and I have a lot of memories that I wish I didn't have. Ultimately, like
wow. I kind of feel like, how do you feel? I feel like maybe you feel better now after getting
no, I'm fine. That's just
like, wow.
I'm thankful and I love it, and it's created who I am now. But that's why I say I don't really know who I am now because my eyes, I can't take back the shit that I've seen and what I've been through. It's not that I'm the only one that's sorry as I'm hitting the table again.
That's okay.
Not that I'm the only one who has been through difficult stuff, but it's interesting coping with having been through certain circumstances that you're supposed to just kind of like let go and let live. Like the namaste stuff is amazing and I love it and I love yoga and I love everything else, but sometimes it's doesn't provide the relief that I would like ultimately. And I'm still trying to cope and I'm still trying to figure out what's the path that I would like to venture down. And like I said, what do I want to do now? Because I know what it's like to achieve massive success and be ultimately left unfulfilled. And not know what to do. So I can sympathize with people like, oh my God, like, fuck is his name? He was Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know why it's
Robin Williams.
Yeah, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not trying to speculate, but this is my assumption of what was potentially going on in his head. He had achieved so much, done so much, still left unfulfilled, which is ultimately what comedians kind of are. Like you have to go through horrific circumstances to develop that coping mechanism to become the light of the room, or become the light of whatever, and then ultimately you still had that void. And he had achieved so much. Where else do you go? Like from that point. And if you can't even connect with your family and you feel so disconnected like an alien on this planet, and where else do you go? There's no money that's going to buy that happiness. There's no larger home. There's no award, some fucking Emmy or Grammy that's going to make you feel any better about that shit. And it's very real and it stays with you. And it probably haunted him for years and years and years. And he coped with it through opiates to a certain degree or through other shit. And then ultimately you're just left with yourself and you don't feel there's any way out. And like, so there's being a human being is a very fascinating life experience. And so I can understand where he's coming from because I've had those thoughts before. Like, I don't know what the fuck to do. No idea. There's no sports team. There's no specific drink. There's no drug. There's nothing else like that that's going to take away the certain like voids that are there. They're very temporary. And I think that everyone's yearning for some form of like connectivity or interconnectivity. We want compassion. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be loved. We want to be embraced. And that's ultimately all that really matters to most human beings. You can say you want fucking cars and money. It's fun for a little bit. And then you're left kind of like...
what's this doing for me?
What? Yeah, like it just doesn't matter after a while. It's like we're all children at the core. once you're given that brand new toy, it's fun for a while, and then you don't give a shit. And that doesn't, like, I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm sorry, it sounds like very negative, but...
It's okay.
But it is, like, ultimately, we're kind of children to where you're given something, and it doesn't really disappear the older you get. Like, our bodies are older, but your mindset and that primal, primitive aspect is still very much a part of you, and it might be taking place unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And that, at least that's what I think. I could be insane. I'm okay with that. I'm completely open to that.
You're only saying differently what all the great teachers, including Jesus and all those guys, have been saying for thousands of years. Why do you want all this stuff? Who cares about the stuff? Let it go.
And it's fun and it's nice, and I want people to experience things, and there's a lot of joy that can be derived from that. But it's ultimately what I've learned and what I'm yearning for. I just want to feel like I belong and actually can relate to people, and I don't know how to do that anymore. Like, I have a hard time. I don't have many people that I can share the experiences that I've been through with. I don't have that. Just to be real, that's where I'm at. I don't know who to talk to about the shit that kind of like I've been through, because there's select few people, and I don't want to go to just an AA thing and reminisce about being a piece of shit. Like, that's not enough for me. Like, I need more. I need to kind of know, how did you pull through? What was the next step that you went through? Who are you now? Who do you want to become? Versus using fear tactics to get me to stay away from, like, my old behavioral traits and stuff. Like,
let's get to that, because I want to give everyone a little context here.
Yeah.
You see, it's very funny because I met you. And you're hustling acai bowls,
yes,
right? Which I'm an addict, straight up. Like, I'm a juice and acai bowl addict. In fact, I joke with my girlfriend. She's like, "What'd you eat for dinner?" I'm like, "I had an acai bowl." It was whatever. She's like, "You have to eat more than that." Yes. I'm like, "No, I don't.
They're pretty satiating.
It's pretty good, yeah. And I have it in the morning actually at home. I got a Vitamix. I do the whole deal, man. I'm a total addict. But what I've really loved about getting to know you is that. Anytime anybody walks into your store in North Hollywood in Los Angeles, you make them feel like they're at home. And I didn't know really anything about you until just the other day. And I thought, I was profoundly affected by your story. And even as you were telling me parts of your story, I said, well, I would love to share this with a bigger audience, because I really feel like there's a lot of people who will resonate with your story. And I find that when we're going through difficult things, one of the most healing things for me is to recognize that even in my pain and even in my difficulty, I can find solidarity with those who are also going through that. Yeah. And I feel like I'm not alone. But then you dropped something on me that I'm embarrassed to admit I had no idea. Maybe I have asked other people and everyone knew.
Yeah, I'm a big deal.
You're a big deal.
Shit.
You're a big deal. No, listen.
No,
you're not. But listen. No, you're right. But you when you say you've had success, you've been on the big stages. Tell us a little bit about just the kind of resume of your music career, where you come from, because I think that's going to provide some of the context around your journey, because you do know what it means to be up and you do know what it means to be down. So tell us the height. Give us a little bit about the height of what you've experienced.
The height of what I've experienced. Do you want to know from kind of the beginning, or
give us the good Charlotte? Give us the good Charlotte stuff. Right. You're a musician.
Yeah, so I'm a musician, drummer. Never intended on being a drummer. Couldn't find anybody to play music with me in high school or in junior high, or select few, I should say. I had a couple dudes, but no one ever took it serious. So I had to teach myself drums, which I'm thankful. I love doing it. I love playing drums. It just became a thing. My father was a drummer, and he rented me a drum kit over time. Wow. Didn't think I was going to stick with it. I absolutely loved it, and it just kind of took over, and I stopped playing sports. All of a sudden, that completely consumed my life.
Wow.
So fast forward, I literally, was a gangster rap kid. I loved listening, NWA, DJ Quick, Eazy-E, anything along those lines. That was my life. And I had to hide it from my parents in the beginning.
Oh, wow.
I had to hide my tapes in my rain gutters outside because it was not allowed. It was inappropriate in my household. So I chose to walk to school every day. That was my goal, because so I could bring my Walkman, listen to whatever music I wanted to. And inside my house was bullshit CNC Music Factory and a bunch of other nonsense.
CNC Music Factory. Wow.
That's the stuff I had in there. So I had to, I learned how to literally be a fraud and, play characters and be a chameleon, so I could appease the life that was inside of my parents' house and then the real life outside of that. But then, so it all started, loved gangster rap. I wanted to be a rapper. I knew that was not feasible growing up in a Utah family. My parents were not going to embrace that. So all of a sudden, I heard Nirvana for the first time in 7th grade.
Wow.
And I like, shit, I had never heard anything like that. And that's what changed my life. Like the fact that it was normal Joe Schmoes playing music that I absolutely loved, the aggression, energy behind it. I became obsessed. Every single day, all I did was learn how to play every single song they'd ever done.
Wow.
Every album, knew it inside and out, got their live VHS, which was Live Tonight sold out. I watched it thousands of times.
And your parents were okay with that? They were okay
Oh,
with
that was the
Nirvana?
only... Yeah, well, my parents would grab like the guitar tablature books. They would scrape out any words that were any language deemed inappropriate.
Wow.
But that's kind of how it started. And I've really got heavily involved in the local music scene in Salt Lake City. That's all I cared about. So go to school, didn't really fucking give a shit. And then I just started getting really involved in that. Got into the whole skate punk scene, essentially, like loved that. That's what I wanted to do. My old band decided to break up one day. And like I had passed on college, didn't want to go, had no desire, but I was going to go to college to be an airplane and helicopter engine mechanic.
Wow.
Which I didn't even like working on cars, so it didn't even make sense.
Work on planes.
Yeah, so I was like,
you're the guy I want working on my plane.
Yeah,
Definitely.
like ultimately I did not want to do that, so I passed on it, and then shortly, less than a year later, that's when my bandmates, like, I love these dudes, we had so much fun, that was the most fulfilling time in music I have ever had.
And when was this?
This was from 1998 to 2000.
Okay.
Probably the most fulfilling time of music in my life, like when I was in high school and just out. Because it was just all pure. It was all strictly about we played what we loved, nothing else. We were creating a scene in Salt Lake City, which no one gave a shit about anything there. Yeah. No one came to shows, and when we had 75 people come to a show, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
Like, and then when it turned into 130, that was unheard of.
Wow. What was the name of that band?
It was a band called ECO. Like, just, it was a fun thing. Like, I loved doing it. I didn't know there was this band called The Used.
Yeah, I remember The Used.
Ended up doing very, very well, but the guitar player, he and I became great friends. His name is Quinn Allman. Okay. And we just kept in contact, and we always wanted to do music together, so we would meet up whenever we could. And no one knew. Everyone thought their band was shit. Like, when they first...
They thought The Used was...
Oh, yeah. Like, when they first came out, they were terrible. Like, they were kids learning to be better, but they had songs. They had great songs.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you fast forward a year after that, we found out they got signed. John Feldman ended up doing pretty much the majority of their records. But they exploded.
Ended up producing their records.
Yes, he ended up producing their records.
Which is like kind of like a director in a movie sense a little bit. Yeah, producer.
So he produced their albums. They got signed to Reprise, which was Warner Brothers. They exploded. The Good Charlotte guys loved The Used and would go watch them on Warped Tour. This is 2002. And my old band had broken up a few months prior to this, and I was like heartbroken, literally crying to my mom. I had no idea. I had no prospects on what to do in life. So I reached out to Quinn. I was like, if you know anybody who's looking for a drummer, just let me know. And coincidentally, literally within 2 weeks, I was meeting the Good Charlotte guys. Wow. So they FedExed me an album called The Young and the Hopeless. And I was already familiar with the band, so I learned both albums in less than like a week and a half. Flew out, met them in Cleveland, played the next day in Chicago. And I had to play in front of it was 12,000 people or something like that.
Wow. So your quote audition.
Yeah, the audition was in front of... They were like, okay, well, you ready to do this tomorrow? Because they had nobody. They were playing with different drummers every day, and it was a shit show, essentially. Like, It ended up being like this crazy thing where they were kind of freaking out, panicking. They didn't know what to do. And all my favorite bands in that era were like lining the stage to see if I was going to ruin this show, essentially. Like, they're like, there's this kid coming out from Salt Lake. He works at 7-Eleven.
You worked at 7-Eleven?
Yeah, I worked at 7-Eleven at the time.
Wow.
And I knew, the thing I always knew internally, it was never, and that's why I want everybody to know, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I knew intuitively and internally, it's not a matter of if, but when.
Right.
And I knew that was my moment, so I was prepared for it. And I was ready, and I was not about to fail in any way, shape, or form. I was scared shitless, but I knew that I was going to make it work.
Wow.
Went out there, met them, and then they asked me, and it turned into 3 years of my life. And I didn't know, I knew the band did well, but all of a sudden, I was on the road for 3 years straight. And
playing arenas.
Playing arenas, but we started off, we did a headlining tour for clubs in October of 2002. By April or late March of the following year, we were doing arenas for the Honda Civic Tour, which was unbelievable, but that's a massive jump within a short amount of months. And it was absolutely incredible. One of the most amazing experiences of my life. I'm very thankful I got to do it. The people were unbelievably incredible. But it was also one of those things that it starts to take its toll. There's no school that teaches you about how to handle when you're... Because everyone's... how do I even describe this? You have everybody back home super excited that you're involved with the project or with something that's as massive as this was.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing, and everyone's like cheering you on, gung ho. Then you fast forward a little bit in the down the road, and then there's inner turmoil. Like relationships start being tested above and beyond.
Relationships at home, relationships in the band.
Everything. Like
everything.
every last aspect where it ends up being a thing where no one tells you it's the most work you've ever done in your entire life. No one tells you that there's no days off. No one explains to you that you're sleeping a few hours a night, and especially if you're doing Christmas showtime, you're getting up at 5 a.m., going to the airport.
Christmas showtime. What do you mean?
There's a season where they do like when they do the K-Rock acoustic Christmas and shit like that out here in LA.
Okay.
There's a series where literally bands are flying across the country all over, and this is 3 weeks to almost a month long, and you're doing different shows in different cities every single night, but the way you get there is you're flying and you're playing with backline rental equipment. So you're getting there. We weren't big enough really yet. We were getting hotel rooms, but I didn't have a drum tech, so I would have to go straight to the venue, and I'd go set up all my shit, and I'm sitting inside of an arena with bands sound checking. It's blasting. Like, it's just so loud. You're trying to lay on a wooden bench, go to sleep. You're sleeping for maybe a couple hours a night, and then you get excited to go to the hotel room, but then you want to hang out with your friends that you're meeting, and it just starts getting taxing. And then I had a girlfriend at the time, and it was hard. Like, it ended up being this thing where all of a sudden I'm gone, and then me being like the person, like I was saying, like my father before, very caring. I care about how I'm impacting those around me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that, and I saw it start becoming a negative thing, and this person did not enjoy what I was doing ultimately.
Your girlfriend.
My girlfriend at the time did not enjoy it, and it was becoming a massive issue. We started fighting often, and so I would be at home. It wasn't fun because she would just remind me how often I was going to be leaving, so we couldn't enjoy the time.
Home was in Salt Lake.
Home was in Salt Lake City, so I'd come home, and it was a thing where it just started getting weird. You get a lot of acquaintances, a lot of just fair weather friends in general. A lot of bullshit. People come around kissing your ass. People that didn't like really wouldn't even really talk to me initially before. Certain girls that didn't want to, I really liked them, but they would never want to hang out with me. All of a sudden my band was doing well. Then it's like you become the cool dude. There's just a lot of weird shit that happens.
Yeah.
And people just change, and you start seeing that, but then you kind of buy into it because there's every musician to a certain degree, or any artist in general, is fairly insecure. I don't care who the fuck it is. Like, that's just the reality of it. So you like the validation and the fact that, oh wow, maybe this person really does like me, and you just start spreading yourself thin. You don't know how to set proper boundaries. I didn't do that. So I literally started to self-destruct. There was no me time. I didn't know how to tell people no. So I'd come home and I'd run all over, try to let everybody know, like, I'm the same old me. I'm just as like cool as I was before. Let's fucking hang. Let's do this. So I would never give myself proper resting time. And I just did dumb shit. Like, wasn't taking care of myself. The self-care was shoved aside. That, along with the stress of being with a girl that didn't really like it's not that she didn't like what I did, but she was not happy at all.
Was she, and I want to dive in a little to some more specifics of what you just said. You just said a lot of stuff, and it was pretty incredible. But so let me, before we get to your girlfriend, life on the road. What kind of you're at this point you are the headlining band. You're the one people are coming to see.
Yes and no. Like, it's both. So it depends upon the shows that you're playing. But ultimately, yes, we were one of the headlining bands. But you also have to prove yourself. So in the beginning, you're the opening band at, like, say, we'll just go back to reference the Christmas time shows. When you start to do well, you'll get like slot 2 of 7 or some shit like that, or slot 1. Like, you're one of the first bands that play, so you have to prove yourself. But you're there, so I'm there all day, and then I have to break everything down. And ultimately, then you finally get to leave really late after the show's done. Then you go to the hotel, and you get there at 2. Then they're like, lobby calls at 5. So like, oh my god! So
lobby
that was
calls at 5 to go to the next venue.
Yes, to go to the next venue, which is like, so say we were in DC once. We got stuck in an airplane for 9 hours, waiting to be de-iced, and we were heading to Texas to go play with Sum 41. It was a Christmas time show. But we literally got stuck on the tarmac for hours and hours and hours. Then we finally flew, got to Texas. They had to have this like rental car service pick us up immediately, and we literally ran inside, and I just threw a drum kit on the stage, and we had to play, and then it was just such a shit show. It was a lot of fun, but everything kind of went wrong that could have. And ultimately, so no one really slept anything, and then that was just happening for day after day after day.
And we don't realize this. We think the celebrity life is glamour, or the celebrity life. We think that successful life is glamour and musicians, or but it is a grind. In fact,
it's the most taxing thing you'll ever do. Like, It's the most beautiful and incredible thing, and it takes a certain personality.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe 80 to 85% of people that say they want to do that for a living are ultimately, after about a month, 2 months, because I've seen it, you're going to want to get the hell out of there. You're not going to want to do it. I've seen it time and time again. Even touring in the nicest conditions, which is ultimately what we were doing. We had 2 buses. We're staying at the Ritz-Carlton. We're staying at Hyatt's. All this nice-ass shit. And I still saw people fall apart.
Wow.
Like, that's ultimately what it is, because you're away. Your sleeping schedule, whatever your consistent daily routine is, that's not real. It doesn't exist anymore. There is no consistent daily ritual. So whatever you're used to doing, if you have something you like doing and giving yourself a certain amount of time every morning to get your mind right, that's fucking gone. Like, ultimately, like, all that stuff is gone, and you're out on the road doing your thing, and you are smashed in a small area, confined area, with numerous other men. Typically not, I mean, that's just what it is. Like, and I love it. I like that life, but it's not for everybody. And I didn't know how to deal with it, so I lost my mind.
Okay, so before we get to how you lost your mind, which we're going to get to, you had mentioned stuff, about getting stuff and cars. Are you making money? Is there any upside? What's the reward?
Like, the reward is essentially because you love playing shows, like, and that's what it is. There's no drug that will ever beat the feeling for me than going on stage and feeling the synergy and the energy of the connection between the audience and the band producing that. And when you get to see thousands of people jumping in unison, and we broke floors repeatedly.
What?
Pillars and shit breaking underneath. That's the most amazing shit. That's why I loved punk rock. I love the chaos that can ensue, and the fact that you can command literally armies of people to go ape shit. You could tell them whatever, and they will do it. And vice versa. It's just one of the most, and the feeling that you get from that, that's my favorite thing. That's the high. That's what I did it for. That's what I got into music for, because that was my escape. That's why I would sit in my basement and yell into a mic and play fucking Nirvana songs, because it made me, I didn't care about anything else. And that's when I'm on stage, that's all I care about. Yeah. That's the stuff that I love, and that's what I want to feel. And yes, it's nice to have some form of material stuff and to be compensated appropriately. And we did. Like, everyone did very well. Mm-hmm. Like, that, it was a thing that, yes, you can make money doing it. Ultimately, I still went down. It wasn't enough. Like, I had my nice-ass apartment. I had my new car. I had my fucking Vespa scooter. I had just a great place to live in Salt Lake. I had a very loving girlfriend, but ultimately, we were just kind of, I was trying to cope and deal with shit, and I didn't know how to have my own time. So I had all this other external shit, but internally I was fuming. I was out of my mind. I couldn't even deal with what was going on, because it wasn't what I envisioned as a kid either. Yeah. It's not what you think. There's a lot of amazing stuff, but it's also, you're on call all the time, and ultimately, it's just, once the veil is lifted and you see how the industry works in general, and just how it, that's how it's got to be for, like, actors in general too. Like, you just have to find that way of understanding there's compromise in everything. Right. And I didn't know that. I came from, like, weird punk rock ethics, so I was stubborn in certain ways, but also I never want to be a tool. I don't ever want someone to fucking tell me who I need to be. I've done that. Someone tried to do that my entire life. That's what the church tried to do to me. So I fought back immensely hard, and I did it in a very dumb, destructive way versus being constructive and doing it more in a productive fashion. I just found ways I literally self-destructed, and that's how I got myself out of, like, certain things I didn't like. And then I lost my joy for music. I didn't love it anymore. Like, I was doing this thing. I was part of something that was unbelievably incredible, and there was very little joy derived from that. And I didn't know where to go from there. I was like, I've achieved this goal. This isn't even fun for me anymore. Wow. What the fuck do I do now? Like, that's where my head was at. Wow. And I liked the fact that, so I guess we'll just spill now. So yeah, I became a drug addict. Mm-hmm. I liked the fact, because Kurt Cobain was one of my favorite people in the whole world, and I liked being in a band that was massive and idolized by kids while snorting OxyContin. Wow. And just doing kind of whatever, and I would kind of hang out by myself, though. It turned into a thing where I became a fucking recluse, didn't know where to go, didn't know how to cope with it, and somehow that was like my joy. It gave me the 2 hours out of the day that were mine. And that's what I was missing. I didn't have that, and those were the moments I could give to myself.
2 hours to do drugs, you mean?
Yeah, because I could just do my thing where I would get high, and it was just, that ended up being, like, those were my moments. No one could take that from me. That was the one thing, and even though it was synthetically produced, it was enough for me at that point, because I wasn't getting it anywhere else. I didn't know how to do it, and instead of just being honest with myself and with other people, I was very passive, and allowed just kind of just the dumbest shits to kind of take over, which I've seen over and over and over again, and so many people fall victim of the same thing, and I became kind of the cliche.
You weren't, you said you weren't honest with yourself. You mean there was trouble going on and you didn't ask for help, and instead you went to drugs, or what do you mean?
As far as, God, how do I describe it? It's more or less, what was going on with me. I wasn't happy in my relationship. When I broke it off with her, that was the best time of my life. The first time I ever went to Australia, that was the most free I had ever been. I finally felt like, oh my God, like that's when the most joy I'd ever felt in my entire existence.
Was being free from that relationship.
Yeah, like for being free from that, but also the freedom to be who I was and to do what I wanted to do. Right. And I was in something that I had achieved what everyone told me I was never going to be able to do. Ever since a kid, that's not obtainable. You can't do that. That's unrealistic. My parents were always very supportive, but most everybody else, every school teacher always told me, no. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. That's not possible. I did this for 14 years and nothing ever happened. What makes you think that you're going to be any different? Like, it's just a common story amongst anywhere. It doesn't matter where you come from. You can do whatever you want. But it's determination, perseverance to the most difficult shit. So, yeah, like, sorry, I didn't mean to digress. But it's the thing where, yes, I finally felt free. And then one of my biggest regrets in life, it's not that I didn't care for this person. She was a very loving human being. But I could feel it internally. It's like it goes back to me, people pleasing, and that's where I was frustrated. Like I would do things for others because I thought about how it would impact them versus myself.
Right.
And I cared more about how I impacted those around me than I did how it was going to ultimately affect me. Because in my head, still, I was in a very crazy headspace. I never planned on living past 27. I always wanted, like, that was
like
kind
Kurt
of
Cobain and Amy Winehouse and Jimi Hendrix. And
yeah, so like it was ultimately like, okay, well, the clock's ticking regardless.
Wow.
And that was the way my head kind of operated because I had been relatively unhappy since a fucking young kid. And that's what forced, like, music was my girlfriend. It was my best friend. It was everything. I never had a best friend. Like, that's...
You said one of your biggest regrets. What was
the biggest regret was the day before the Honda Civic tour in 2003, I went and met up with my ex, and we got back together that night. Like, and it was the dumbest thing I have ever done.
Why?
Because... it was insincere. Like, it was a momentary lapse of judgment where I felt connected to this person, but the emotions of the moment were overriding actual, like, logical, rational thought, like, rational thought.
No, that's never happened to me. Yeah, I don't think anyone understands what that's about at all.
So I did something I didn't want, and it turned into a fight that lasted for probably a year and a half, and like that's it. Just
let me ask you, are you still in touch with her? Are you on Facebook?
We talk periodically, yeah. Like she lives in Denver now, and
she doing well? Is she?
Yeah, everything is awesome. Like she had a kid,
great.
Ended up getting married. I think she got divorced recently, but
I don't know what that's like either. Who would know what that's like?
So just kind of did her thing, which was good, but we had to get away from one another. We were so toxic, and it was such a horrible thing. And still to this day, I have like. It's a company called Command Music, which does like Ovation guitars. They do Remo drum heads, all sorts of shit. Gretsch drums. The one guy still, when I'll see him, be like, I still remember that day when I came across you and you smashed your phone in front of me on the ground because I was so infuriated. Because I was fighting every day. It was supposed to be like the greatest time of my life, and I hated it.
Wow.
And it was a thing where, like, before I'd go on stage, it would just be this crazy argument, and I stuck it out. Like, I was just trying to be the good dude.
So let me, man, I feel like we could sit here for several hours.
Oh, yeah, that's too much to talk
going
about.
forever. I just want to, there's so many things I want to ask you about because it's so rare to get to sit in front of somebody and with somebody who's experienced really the wholeness of life and is also willing to express it. I think a lot of us experience all kinds of things, but we keep it in and we don't talk about it. And, everything that you're talking about, we see it a lot with actors too. Any kind of artist, they think they want the fame and then they get it and they're like, hold on, that's not what it's about. That's not it. And I've had lots of actors who you might consider celebrity actors that you'd recognize, and I've worked with them. And one of the first things they always say is, I achieved everything I thought I wanted to achieve, and now I feel hollow. And they have to come back to realize that unless your character is strong first, unless you are built on some sort of foundation, I guess, you can pile all the material stuff on top and it doesn't mean anything. Let me go back to something that you've brought up the church and that you're raised from a Mormon family and stuff. Where are you now with the idea of God or spirituality or any of that kind of? What's your relationship now to whether it's the church or God and religion might be different, or what is it now? What's that?
I question it every day because the thing is, I've bounced all over. I have no desire to be part of any organized religion. I don't like it. I view it. I'll just be blunt. I view it as a cancer on society. It has done so much damage, and it's hurt so many people, and everyone's God's the right one when it's all subjective, and your truth is your truth only. That's what I figured out, but my truth changes often. Like I think that if religion brings peace and beauty to your life and it helps you, and again, it's like a navigating light force in general, hell yes, by all means, do whatever. But at the same time, I think we are in a day and age, there's just too much information available. And relying upon something that was written and rewritten and rewritten and retranslated over and over and over, is absolute insanity to me. Because the lessons, yes, they're very plain and simple, and it should be common sense. But I became more obsessed with spirituality around 2007. And I love spirituality. I love
what does that mean to you?
Spirituality to me is more or less the way I kind of view stuff is that, and I don't know if it's right. I question it every day still. So I say this, but I don't even know if I believe it. Ultimately, I feel that whatever the fuck is piloting this flesh vessel wanted to go through specific experiences to have some form of basis of comparison and knowledge to understand what it's like to do that shit or something like that. And that's the only thing that I can understand why I made the dumbest decisions ever, is in order for me to grow and become a wise person to a certain degree, whatever the fuck that is, to help other people maybe not do the same shit that I have. But the thing is, I'm that person too that people always told me certain things, and I still did it anyways. So you can't really tell anybody anything.
So I want to, because you're saying a lot of things right now that are crazy, and I love it. Not crazy in a bad way, but mind. We have to wrap our mind around some of these things. So in today's world, we hear a lot of talk, especially in Los Angeles. Welcome to the hub of this conversation.
Yes.
The difference between religion as something organized and structured and man-made and laws and rules and things that people and spirituality, which seems to be a little less defined, a little more.
Okay, then I think I can answer that.
What is it? Yeah, what are you talking? You said
for me,
something
what I'm saying is
propelling this flesh vehicle.
Whatever that is. Ultimately, and this is what I feel, although I question it all the time because because with my own decision-making process and just things that go on in my brain, I feel that every single person, if you are creating the image of something, what would make you any less? I will never feel inferior to a specific superior being. I will never bow down to a specific superior being ever, because there are no savior figures. Nothing is going to take away your problems. Nothing is going to take away your emotional instability and shit that's going on except yourself. There's nothing that will pull you through anything, and I've learned that. There was no God that pulled me out of heroin addiction. There was no God that sat beside me patiently waiting and comfort me. No, I hurt, and I felt all that shit, and I learned through my own discomfort and things that were not pleasurable on what to not do the next time. But at the same time, I feel that we are all potentially gods that forgot they are. So you're kind of creating, and you can do whatever you want, ultimately, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. And I try not to get too caught up in what this life is, because there's a lot of stuff, I'll be quite honest, I don't like being on this planet that much. There's certain aspects that it's not the most desirable place. There are certain things that we do to one another that it hurts me. I'm very empathetic to other human beings, and I don't like feeling that. And it just gets more and more severe the older I get. The more compassionate and empathetic I am, the more it hurts me to see the way we treat one another.
Does your empathy resonate more with the negative effects we have on one another, or is it also balanced by the positive effects?
By both, because there's a lot of great things too that I absolutely love seeing. It's just harder for me because when you go through difficult stuff, you become a hardened individual. And I want to showcase this stuff, and I'm thankful you're able to get this out of me now, because I'll talk about this to anybody, but not just anybody.
Right.
That's the reality of it. I don't want to sit. Small talk means nothing to me now.
Right.
I'm not better than anybody else. I just don't give a shit. I don't have a sports team to talk about. I don't give a fuck about celebrities. I don't give a shit about clothes. I don't care about fashion. Like, that's just me. It's not that those are bad.
What do you care about? What do you care about?
What do I care about? I don't know. Like, that's what I'm trying. Like,
but
I'm
see,
trying to figure out.
Let me reflect back to you something.
Yes.
Okay. See,
I care about human beings.
yes, right.
Yeah.
So right. So when I met you for the first time, and still when I'm sitting across from you, there is nothing in my intuitive understanding of who you are. And of course, I don't know you that well, except for my intuition is telling me that this is someone who cares deeply.
Oh yeah,
actually,
too much
about a lot of things. But you just listed off a whole bunch of stuff you say you don't care about. So
that's because those are. I guess those are surface. I mean, there is a lot of stuff. So I'm not trying to be a hypocrite or contradict myself.
I think as Emerson said that I'm a paradox.
Yes.
I'm complicated,
and that's what I am because I'm still figuring that out. Like, I'm in a new day and age where I don't know. I don't have hobbies right now. I run a juice bar and I try to make music on the side. And the things that I loved beforehand don't impact me the same way they used to. So I'm refinding myself now. Wow. I don't even know what I like.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's going to be rock climbing. I don't know if it's like, I like horses. I want to have horses someday. Is
this a scary place for you? For a lot of people would go,
oh, it's absolutely terrifying. This is the craziest.
Could this be an exciting place for you?
Yeah, it's both. It's a combination of the two. Like, this is the most unknown territory I have ever ventured into, and there's no guidance. There's no mentor. There's no one to let me know, like, at the end, like, it's going to be okay. Other than probably, like, the crazy shit that I've gotten from taking mescaline or salvia. That's the only thing where literally, like, shaman-style people have told me, like, you worry about the dumbest shit, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And that's the only thing that I can take to heart. And it may be completely false, but that's the only thing that kind of, like, I don't really know. I'm navigating through the most uncharted territories in my life. And it's beautiful and incredible, but I don't know who to talk to about it. Like, that's because I don't really have. I mean, I know everyone's like, no one has life figured out by any means. And maybe I'm closing myself off from extending it. I just don't really know where to go to kind of like converse and maybe get that reassurance that where I'm at is a perfectly normal thing.
I think this is how I really do.
Yeah.
I think this is how a lot of people fall into religious practices.
Yeah.
They're looking for some sort of guidance or meaning out of life. I mean, it seems like we crave meaning in anything. I mean, everybody does. We're sitting backstage right now in a theater, and I know there's a lot of meaning in this backstage space.
Yeah.
You know, there's somebody made a mark over there. There's a lot of traditions in the theater and these places. We will extract meaning from anything.
Yes.
And I can imagine when we feel like meaning is gone, we might feel empty. We might feel, what am I doing? What's going on?
And it's not that I don't have, like, that I feel ultimately empty. It's just religion's not going to work for me.
Right.
There's just a lot of, like, specific coping mechanisms that most people have. And I envy those who get to sit around with their friends and kind of have specific, like, small talk conversations.
Right.
I think it's a luxury to be able to bitch about politics. I think it's important.
Right. Wow.
I feel it's a luxury to kind of sit down and bitch about what someone wore on the fucking red carpet. Like, that's amazing. If you are in a position in your life to where those are the issues that you get to talk about, like, that's awesome. Like,
wow.
That's amazing. And I'm not, like, shitting on anybody by any means. That's just, we're very fortunate.
Right.
Very fortunate and entitled society that, I don't know, like, granted, I mean, I don't even know what it would have been like when your roles were kind of like, so-and-so gets to go out and has to hunt for food today. Well, the other person chops down this tree and does other shit. Like, were they thinking the same thing? I don't know. Like, I'm just curious if it's just all relative or if we've just ultimately backed ourselves into a corner with such amazing technological advances and just societal advances that we have figured out a way of just creating problems out of thin air. Like, and maybe I'm guilty of that. I don't know.
Wow.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, are we that lucky that...
I have to tell you, you've said a word a few times that I've heard. You've said the word chaos several different times.
Yeah.
And I think as an artist, our relationship to chaos really defines a lot of what we're capable of tolerating, what we're able to do. Maybe even as a person, our relationship to chaos defines a lot of how we navigate the world.
Yeah.
Whether we're okay with chaos or can surrender to chaos or we resist chaos. And just getting your energy from you sitting here talking to me. I'm like, this is a lot of chaos, and I love it. It's
That's
amazing.
so much.
And I can see. I wish I could watch you play drums. I'm going to go watch some video
it's
now.
intense. That's my favorite.
I can't watch you play drums and really make some sort of rhythm out of chaos. That's a unbelievable thing. And what I want to do is just I want to get a little clarity around some parts of your story, so that we have a little context.
So I probably have a tendency to jump all over.
No, I love jumping all over. This is the best thing ever. So I like chaos, but for those of us who need a little structure, let me go back. So the kind of landscape that has created your worldview and your perspective on life and death and meaning and all of these things, you have gone from a very kind of structured upbringing through a very specific perspective into kind of breaking free from that and rising to the tops of a very chaotic industry in music. And now I kind of want to know, and I kind of want to know how you went from one of the top bands in the world to running a juice bar in North Hollywood. What was that transition?
Transition.
How did you get here?
One of the hardest ones of my life. That was probably. I don't ever want to go through that experience ever again. That's, to be real.
Can you tell me about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm thankful, and it's been beautiful, and there's been a lot of great moments, but at the same time, like, the birth of new things, like you're saying, it only comes through chaotic circumstances. That's the reality of it. Anything you want to achieve, anything you want to do, something else has to give. Something else has to literally break in order for, like, opportunities will never cease to present themselves. It's just whether or not you are ready or willing to take them. And that's the way it's always worked for me. They will always come, but it's going to come through very hurtful means. And I became a piece of shit, essentially. Like, I was a very negative headspace, was in a band that was doing very, very well, and I felt fucking terrible, and I still do to this day. There's parts that I carry with me for what I put those guys through. Like, we were one of the biggest bands, and I lost my mind and dragged them into my shit, and then ultimately became an asshole, and I tried to pin it off on them, and I did and said some shit that I wish I could take back. Like, right when the digital age was really taking over, and I was a fucking idiot, essentially. So, like, there's...
But what does that mean? You were doing idiot things? You were saying idiot things?
Just saying dumb things and then posting stuff, and, like, that's what people don't realize, the power and the longevity. Anything you put online is there forever. It never goes away, ever. Doesn't matter if you erase it, it is there. There's a digital imprint that will last forever.
So you said stuff publicly.
I said shit publicly in a shitty frame of mind, and there would have been a much better way of going about it, and I was upset, it was emotional, and I just did some shit, and I severed the relationship with my friends for years.
Wow.
And it took me so long to even rebuild that. And, like, now everything's good.
How did you rebuild it? Because you're not the only one who severed relationships with people. And how did you go about rebuilding?
Pulling my head out of my ass and suffering for many years.
I mean, and then, through apologies, asking forgiveness. How did you do that?
Being resentful and still kind of like we battled amongst one another for a while, and it took them 3 years before they finally even extended themselves to me to kind of say hi and check in to see how I'm doing.
These were your bandmates?
Yes. Because it was that bad. I did and said some shit that I wish I would not have, and I didn't think of the power of that. Like, it was me feeling entitled to a certain degree at the age of 25, 26, thinking that, well, I've already been in a big band, people should essentially, like, it should be easy for me again. And no, it's not. Like, wherever you have to start over always.
Wow.
And I got very upset because it was going to be a harder road than what I anticipated, and I said stuff that made it even harder. And
was there a day when they asked you to leave the band?
It was just kind of a mutual thing. I didn't want to be there, and they didn't want me to be there anymore.
Wow.
And it was a thing where we went out and did 2004. We were doing Christmas shows together, and I was still actively. I had just gotten out of rehab. Was still actively seeking out drugs on the road because I didn't know what else to do. Like, it became a ritual at that point. That's why I understand people not getting off drugs, because it's associated with everything, and I didn't know what to do, and it was the only way of me getting my couple of moments still. And then I was on tight watch. So I now had a bunch of
tight watch. What's that?
Like, a lot of people monitoring my every move, and so I was freaking out, and I didn't know what to do. And they were, like, rightfully so. They wanted to make sure I was okay, but it became like I almost had, not them per se, but just my family and everybody else. Everyone wanted to make sure I was all good. So I was, like, panicking all the time. It just felt weird having my every move monitored, essentially. And I didn't know how to cope with that. And ultimately, being with my then girlfriend, it just became a thing where we started doing drugs together again, and I put myself in a position because I didn't want to be a part of it, and I was so angry and upset and hurt about just dumb shit that I would rather die and drag myself, like burn to the ground, than just suck it up and actually live a brand new life. And I didn't know how to do that yet. I wasn't done partying to a certain degree.
Right.
And so there was that dumbass part of me, and that's how I was coping with shit. I just continued.
What's the dumbest thing you did that you can talk about?
Oh my God, there's so many. I just have
there's
horrible...
so many. It's like your tattoos. There's so many. I don't know how to count all these tattoos and these dumb...
There's the dumbest thing that I've done, honestly, was just making life-altering decisions while under the influence of drugs in general. Shit like making decisions that were going to impact the rest of my life while I was in an angry, negative headspace, also being perpetuated by the use of opiates and cocaine. Like just the dumbest shit you can do, and getting headstrong and being very stubborn and being like, fuck you then, like just being too proud to stop. And that's just the dumbest thing you can do. Like there was no stepping down for me, and I just made it that much harder, and I became much more resentful and expected more, even though the path I was on was going to be amazing.
Right.
And I couldn't see it. Although ultimately, it wasn't where I wanted to be. Like that's what I struggled with. It. I grew up idolizing, like I said earlier, Nirvana, Rage Against the Machine, Pantera, Foo Fighters, Blink-182, all bands that did exactly what they wanted when they wanted. But then you're dealing with a machine that's much larger than you. The band is massive, and you have to make sure that you appease certain things, and that's just, I don't know. Like I had a hard time internally, and so I would just get frustrated about shit, and I would take it to heart, things that should not have been that big of a deal. And I felt that my character inside was being suppressed and shit, so I became more self-destructive in just the dumbest fashion. It just doesn't make sense doing typical young mindset dipshit stuff.
So when you got out of the band and you're putting that, and I realize there's a lot of time here, but you officially left Good Charlotte at when?
This was in 2005, probably around May, so they had to fly out. The guy from Alkaline Trio was playing drums, Derek from Alkaline Trio. I think that's his name.
But then I meet you 2016.
Yeah.
Late 2016. And
the transition is I tried to do multiple musical projects after that. I went into other things, and I was still in a bitter, resentful headspace. Great potential, amazing stuff, created some incredible music, had so much fun, still had the time of my life, but was trying to get back up to an area that wasn't fulfilling. Trying to get back up into the pop realm, which is not what resonated with me at the core.
But why do we do that? I don't want to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but you've said this a few times, and I know that I read an interview actually with Madonna a long time ago, and she said, as long as it's ego-driven, it will never actually be enough. You'll always go, give me more, give me more, give me more, give me... And it's like we're trying to fill some hole that isn't filled by stuff.
But you think it'll be different the next time. Like, well, when I get it this time, then it's going to make sense. And it doesn't ever. It's the same thing with, like, I'm going to quit drugs later. Like, tomorrow will be the day I'll do it. Like, you ultimately just assume that day is going to come, and it never does. And so I kept trying to chase certain things. And then, honestly, like, I love music so much, and I love artists, but the reason why I'm at where I'm at now, like, years ago, even when I was doing a shitload of drugs, I still juiced every day. I bought a Juice Man juicer.
Wow.
I had a little juice, so I was, like, into it. So I'd go snort OxyContin, make my carrot, apple, celery juice every morning. That was how I started, and I'd go record this album, and I'd come back, hang out by myself. So I was very much intrigued by it, loved it. I didn't know I was going to end up in that area. But ultimately, what happened, did multiple projects, had my heart shattered repeatedly because things just don't work out. Like, that's just what happens. Went to multiple things. I went through a project where we had Scooter Braun, who was Justin Bieber's manager. We had Rob Cavallo produce the record, who was the president of Warner Brothers simultaneously. Nothing happened for this album. It never came out.
Wow.
Spent 3 years of my life on that one. And I was heartbroken. Like, when that happened, so I went to the R&B world. And I built this baby up called Jameson with a good friend of mine who he picked me up from Salt Lake City. Very talented, amazing human being. And we grew apart. And I did not foresee that. Like, built this thing when it finally started doing well. We grew in separate directions, and it shattered my fucking soul. Like, that was the point where I was so close to suicide. Lost the closest friend I'd ever had, which was my ex-girlfriend. Loved her dearly. that was the closest confidant I've ever experienced in my life. So like you just go through multiple ups and downs, and I had no choice. Like I'd helped open up numerous spots because I was in a position also to where the projects I did were all passion based. I loved them, but you're not making much money. So you're barely surviving. So you're out on the road. You're making a little bit, but when I'd come home, I still had to work. That was just what it was. And I was never too proud to work. I never thought I was better than that. I knew I always had to start over. I'm never that type of dude that's like, well, I've achieved this, I shouldn't have to go back. Like, fuck that. I still slept on floors. I slept in vans, cars, whatever. I'll do anything, almost to a fault. That's why I had to do something different, because I will kill myself and do whatever's necessary. I'll be the first person out in the snowstorm trying to dig the fucking van out of the snow, or like, I'll do anything that it takes for music because I love it so much, and to play music and to play shows almost to a T, where I will shatter and ruin any relationship that's around me. I don't do it intentionally. It's never done out of malice. But that's what music means to me. There has been nothing that's been able to fill that void other than just music again.
Well, how are you surviving now? Let's talk about what you do now.
Okay, what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, because you make. I mean, you seem like actually like the beacon of health. Are you sober now? Do you drink? What's?
I smoke weed. Like I'll do that. Like the thing is, I will never fuck opiates. All the hard shit, I will never go back. Yeah. I've learned my lesson the hard way, and I'd rather die. I'd rather blow my own head off than actually go back and go through withdrawal. Like that was one of the worst things, and I don't think I have it in me to do it. That was
the withdrawal part.
It's the worst experience. There's no words I can even that will describe it. It is the absolutely most atrocious thing I have ever experienced, and it still haunts me to this day. Feeling that stuff, I remember it. I remember what it tastes like, what it feels like. The thought process. I don't ever want to go through that. That's what keeps me away from it. But I also wholeheartedly believe in the ability to regain self-control and self-discipline. I very much have it. I'm not a dipshit. I'm not about... You can put whatever in front of me. I'm just not that kid anymore.
Do you crave it ever?
Never.
Never even crave it?
No, I have no desire because for years, it took me years, though, to get off to that way.
What would you say to somebody, there's somebody listening right now who, and I'm not saying you've got the answers, but I'm saying if someone came to you and they met you in your juice shop and they said, I'm hooked on heroin and I go through bouts of real suicide. If you could look that person in the eye and just tell them something, what would you say? What
would I say to them? That you're just going to have to suffer for a little bit. That's the reality of it. There is no way of getting around it. There is no quick fix. Just know that you're not the only one. Ultimately, like this is something that, and you can come through it because I know it. And I heard people saying this to me, but until, like, I don't know if my words are going to comfort that person. I want them to. Mm-hmm. I would love for that to do it. I just know how hard it is to hear it when you're in it.
Right.
And it's nice to have someone there who recognizes, and it can't be someone who's just studied it in a fucking book. It can't be someone who's just gone to school and understands, well, he's obviously experiencing these withdrawals. Like, you need to know. You need to know and be able to feel and go through that and have that empathy and compassion and know in your voice and just be there with that person and let them know that there is something, that it's possible to get out of it, but also it's the hardest thing to hear is that it's going to take time, because it took me 2 years after getting off before the drug haze even dissipated.
Wow.
The cloud of me being a dipshit and saying and doing dumb shit before I finally was like, what are you doing? This is insane. Because it rewires your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what I would say. Like, that's the thing. Like, I want to be of assistance. I want to help out. I think that just me being here and them seeing who I am now, I don't want to say anything. I just want them to see it.
So let's talk about that. Because I know that feeling, because I've never had experiences with drugs like this. I mean, I've never even smoked weed. Like, I'm
really
I drink. Don't worry. I had a couple drinks before we did this interview. But I know he's just like, I've lost all credibility. Where are you going? He's leaving now. He's like, what is this? I have no tattoos. I don't drink. But I mean, I do drink, but I haven't done drugs. But I've now dabbled recently. Okay. I have a friend who's microdosing mushrooms.
Jesus.
So, right. Yeah. So I said, but tell me that's not going to get me into the withdrawals you're talking about.
No, hell no.
So but I have friends and I have people very close to me, and by the nature of free listening and stuff like that, I get a lot of people come to me who are suicidal, they're deep into an addiction, and I'm very open with them about, I don't know what to do except for I can be with you, and I can love you, and I can just be with you, and I recognize that there's going to be a tremendous amount of suffering to get to the other side. And I can do what I can do as a human being to hold you or hug you or offer you hope. But
best thing
I've never been through it, so
I know what helped me. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
And this is like probably it's going to be the hardest thing for anybody to do. When I was faced with no options, that was the only way I got off. When I was told that all of my safety lines were done and the only place I had left was the streets or death, that's what ultimately got me thinking. When I recognized there was no joy, when I didn't even like music anymore.
Wow.
That was when I knew it was time.
So I hope this doesn't reduce it, but when you said that, I was told, this does not compare, but actually it kind of does in a weird way. I was told, how do you know when to put a dog to sleep? Mm-hmm. Like your pet that you've loved. How do you know when it's time? And a vet told me, when you see the dog no longer enjoying the things they've always loved, then you know it's time.
Yeah, and that's what it was.
It's like it's time to put the dog to sleep. There's no more joy. It's time to change or stop or die.
The thing is, probably a lot of families, though, don't create that environment that lets people know that they're ready to a certain degree. Not because it's... I mean, granted, I don't know how to reword that properly. Because maybe granted, yes, you have to be very stern and tough. That's the best way. That's the only way. Because there's no easy...
For the family,
the family, essentially, because if you provide options and there's always that, like, a little level of comfort and they know that they can always kind of get away with it, there's no incentive to ever stop. And I saw the look in my mom's eyes when my heroin needles and spoons and my little cotton swabs and little film container that held my cotton swabs were all laid out with my Crown Royal bag sitting on the countertop. There was no option.
Because your mom found them all and she laid them all out.
She always saw me carrying my backpack. She knew something was going on. I was living at my parents' house.
And she's a drug and rehab nurse.
But I hid it from her for a long time because you're smart. Drug addicts are not idiots. That's the thing. They're not dumb. Like, if you can get away with it for a long time... I mean, well, there can be some really idiotic ones, but I became a master to a certain degree until I couldn't any longer because I couldn't afford it. But had I had millions of dollars on my bank account, so I'm also thankful that shit kind of went sour, I would be dead. You couldn't stop me. There's nothing that would have stopped me because I had the money to back it up, and no one can tell you what to do when you have money, essentially. What the fuck can anyone tell you what to do? And I burned through everything. I got kicked out of my apartment. I lost my car.
You burned through everything. You were buying drugs? You were buying what?
Oh, yeah. I made good money, but even in like a short time span, I had spent $60,000 just on drugs. I was buying drugs every 3 weeks, spending $3,000, and I would buy it off this lady. I bought all of her prescription drugs. I would buy everything that she got. She got the most insane amounts of shit. She would get 120 1,200 milligram fentanyl suckers, 50 80 milligram Oxycontins, 50 Norco, which are 10 milligram Lortabs, plus 30 milligram morphine, plus 20 15 milligram Dilaudids.
Now, see, I have no idea what these are.
It's all crazy.
But somebody's listening,
Someone
going, their mind is blowing.
I became a fucking pharmacist. I knew everything. I had the little pharmacist. I knew everything. I could tell you, the Watson 385s. That's the 7.5/10, or 7.5/350 milligrams of acetaminophen.
And so, but today you can do this with Asahi, and carrots and ginger. Now, I don't want to. But one day you gave me, I still think you're pushing drugs a little bit. It's just now the drugs are ginger and
I am.
I was like,
but it's a different form.
It's good for you.
My obsession has turned into something else where I understand ratios. I started understanding flavor profilings and what works and what doesn't, and that there's no rules. It's just how you fucking do it.
And you gave me some ginger one day. One day I came in and I was feeling a little low, and you gave me E3?
E3 Live, which is an algae.
It's an algae. You gave me an algae, and then I wanted some ginger in an acai bowl or something, and you forgot to put it in, so you gave me 2 ounces of ginger juice. Do you remember this? And I was like, dude, I'm gonna be just crapping my pants here in a second. Like, you can't give me this stuff.
And it does, usually within 2 hours.
Yeah, right. It was, oh my God. So I couldn't get through the ginger. Like, that hurt. But I know the spice. But
I do that every day.
So what is, and just to kind of finish up here, your story to me, here's the irony. We've talked about religion, we've talked about drugs, we've talked about rock and roll and music and stuff, and here we are. You've literally come from, pardon the analogy here, but been crucified and, almost resurrected in a way, right?
Yeah.
So what is life for you now as with Juice and you're actively promoting a healthy lifestyle for hundreds of people. What is life for you now?
What is life for me now? And this will go back. This is what gives me a sense of purpose, and this is why certain things fell through the way they did. This will kind of hopefully summarize a lot of other stuff and bring clarity. Ultimately, we as human beings, we want to be able to construct and create things from anew. We want to build stuff from scratch from their infancy. I was thrust into Good Charlotte right when we just about exploded. Didn't feel like mine. I suffered immensely internally.
Wow.
Bunch of other stuff, same thing. Like thrust into certain circumstances that ultimately I didn't create from the beginning. That's been a huge thing for me. That's been one of my life. Never felt like it was mine. So I struggled internally and I suffered because of that, ultimately. So where I'm at now, I learned a lot about health and nutrition. Because I started with Good Charlotte. We brought a nutritionist out on the road. I would pay attention to everything he had to say. Wow. So when the whole soy milk craze first started, and it changed, it just got me thinking about stuff, about proper ratios of carbohydrates to essential fats to protein and how much needs to be eaten each meal in order for it to break down over a long extended period of time so that you have accessible energy and you're not just like spiking your blood sugar and it's dropping 2 hours later and you feel like shit, so you eat some more sugar or more coffee just to refuel yourself and you're fucking your like pancreas up essentially. Mm-hmm. I started to really pay attention to things and how it made me feel, and I kind of became obsessed to a certain degree, and then I really loved the juicing industry, and I went around and I met this guy and I worked at his shop in Silver Lake, and I wanted to learn everything about it. And then I helped him open up 3 different places. And then ultimately I helped my partners open up a shop at the farmer's market in the Grove. And I told them... Which
is a really, really, really great kind of shopping market in Los Angeles. Outdoors, really awesome.
And I was like consulting for them and working for them simultaneously. Then I learned everything about cold press juicing at that point. Because I knew ultimately, I was like, this is something I can do. I know I can do this. I love this. This is the only other thing that I love other than music that I can put my heart and soul in, and that my life experiences will actually be put to use. And I knew that I could make a place that would crush it and do well, and that people would be able to vibe out and actually enjoy it. And I told them, I was like, just so you know, at some point, I'm going to go do this somewhere. I have to. This is the only, I didn't know what else to do, and I panicked because I'm doing this because I don't know what I want to do. And this makes sense for me now. And I love it, and I can see myself building something beautiful. Whether or not it's with this or with something else, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be in this form, and it's going to lead me to where I need to be. And I have to think that way, because if I don't know what else I'm doing. That's kind of where I'm at, and I love this, and I love spreading this knowledge to brand new newcomers that come into my shop and have no idea. And I'm literally helping people, and I'm watching, because I deal with sick people all day, every day.
Right.
And I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to like pass on misinformation. It's shit that's worked for me, and if it's strictly psychosomatic, that's enough. Because your brain is that powerful, and if that's all it is, at the least, and I'm seeing it work on me, and I rarely get sick, if at all, and if I do, the duration's very minimal, something's going on.
Because you're juicing a lot?
Yeah.
Are you a vegetarian? Or
No, pescatarianism is my preferred method of eating, but I love vegan, vegetarian fare. I will always enjoy it. It's something I seek out often, but I'm also like... I'll eat a burger periodically. Like, I will not deprive myself of the minor joys in life.
Minor joys?
Yeah,
that's huge.
I'm just saying, like, but those are the things that matter to me. And, like, those are the moments that I love. Like, when I can go sit there and I used to love waking up in the morning because there would be no one else awake when I lived with numerous roommates. And I could sit there and eat my cereal with my blueberries and strawberries and bananas cut up into it, or my oatmeal. And it was my moment in the morning where the sun would be shining on me. It was quiet. You'd hear the birds. Those are the moments that I love now. Like, that's the shit that matters to me. And I happen to live in a city that's nonstop stimulation, sirens, people. It's never ending. And it's fascinating that I live here, that I'm consciously choosing this life, because there's a large part of me that's like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't want to be here. But I love it because I see what I can do, and I need to be here because I need to meet these people that are coming into my shop.
Yeah.
I needed to meet you. It's important for me. This is not just a fucking money-making thing. This is my life. I eat, breathe, and live this.
Yeah.
and I will probably die doing something along these lines one way or another. And that's just, I want to do shit that I'm passionate about, and that's all that fucking matters to me. I have no time to waste doing shit that I don't believe in, that I don't care, and I won't do that. I refuse to do that. Too many people live their lives doing shit just to make money and to make a paycheck while they're dying internally. And there's certain aspects, I'm not balling by any means. I don't make a lot of money, but I'm content and I enjoy what I go on to do. And I have unbelievably incredible neighbors, the fellow shop owners. I could not ask for a better group of people. I've met some of the most kind-hearted, loving, strange, out of their fucking mind people I've ever met. And I love it. And I'm scared shitless about losing that. Because I love the community that I have now. And it's what I needed when I felt I had nothing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything a year ago. I had no prospects.
Wow.
And I lost almost everything again. And I'm rebuilding it. And this is brand new. So this whole experience, I don't know what to expect.
But where can... and we need to finish up here. Where can people find your shop? More about you? What's the name of your shop?
Okay, yeah. So my shop is called Greenhouse Juice Bar. It's in North Hollywood, California. It's off of 5235 Lancashire Boulevard. It's a bunch of wood paneling in the front. You'll probably hear trap music, or.
And is there a website? Is there something?
Yeah, but it's shitty. It hasn't really been done. The thing is, I've done nothing. Yeah. It's been word of mouth.
It's packed in. I mean, I come in and there's a line and it's incredible, man.
I haven't done, there's no advertisement. It's been strictly a little, like Yelp has kind of helped us essentially as far as like people posting shit on it. That's about it. But my Instagram, I don't really give a fuck. I just do whatever I want. I'm appeasing myself. I make myself laugh. That's all I'm doing for it.
Yeah.
So I try to outdumb myself, and it's working, which is kind of funny. So like I'm trying to figure out ways of doing that because I don't want to be ordinary. I have no desire to be like any other place. That's where my partners and we may conflict a little bit, but I think that I always have the store's best interest at heart, but this place needs to be authentic and genuine and sincere and real, and I'm not going to be Pinkberry. Fuck Jamba Juice. Fuck any stereotypical, ordinary, standardized, bullshit-looking kitchen place where people wear the same uniforms. I don't want that. I want this to be unique, and I want you to give a shit, and I view it like the tattoo industry. If you don't like my shop, I'm okay with that. You can go somewhere else. I don't need everybody. I don't want everybody. I'm done with those days. If you like it and you and I vibe and you're fucking cool, hell yes. If you want to come try it out, you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to be that asshole that pushes away business by any means. Like I'm very embracing and welcoming, and I love the people that come in. It might not be for everybody, and I don't care. I don't want it to be. That's where I'm at.
I gotta tell you, I've been. And this is the last thing, because we have to finish. But I'm one of these guys who just goes to the same place all the time. I'm a regular. Yeah. I've got 5 T-shirts. I've got 2 pairs of pants. I go to the same restaurants all the time. Everybody knows me where I go. Like I would like to be Norm from Cheers. Like that is my life. And I so much love coming to your store because it's not only really good and high quality and all this stuff, but it's you. It's you.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about being a regular somewhere is the people and the people that you get to know and stuff. I cannot thank you enough for opening up today.
Yeah, of course. I hope we got enough that wasn't
we'll see.
strictly digressing all over the place.
That's okay. Digressing is great. Okay, that's the whole point. That's what life really is in many ways. But I have to tell you, your story is inspiring. And
you can do whatever the fuck you want. You really can. The fact I made this and I was able to get in a band that was massive, that's my last message. Yeah. You can do anything. It doesn't matter. Like, you just have to be willing to go through some hard shit. I didn't know this was going to happen, and I made it happen.
The juice thing.
Yes, and it wasn't like, it's not the ideal scenario yet, but it's pushing me towards exactly what will be for myself. Yeah. And there's compromise in everything. And don't be a dipshit that cut yourself off from potential opportunity because you're unwilling to compromise. That's the reality of it, and that's what I have to do too. And I need to be smart about it. I have to use my semi-adult brain, but I still want to appease. I still want to feel like a 17-year-old kid because that's important. I need my innocence. It has to be there. I have to have that. I do not have any desire to be grown-up, grumpy old man who's jaded and doesn't give a fuck about anything. But at least I'm successful and I have my family and I think everything's okay. I don't want that. Yeah. Not that I don't want a family per se, but innocence is important. Yeah. And I feel we need to maintain as youthful as you can. And you need to evolve with the times as well. And that's why I love music this day and age. And I'll never be old man that hates on shit because there's a lot of incredible shit.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to be an old guy that's trying to be 18 still. But yes, I don't know. Whatever that means.
I think we've come all the way back around to I don't know who I am. And
Exactly.
that's not a bad place to be.
I'm figuring it out.
I don't think you're the only one. And
I don't think anybody has any idea.
No, I love your sense of discovery and your energy. There's a whole lot of chaos that's happening, and I love every second of it.
So much. It's
crazy. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
This is Chris Wilson. Check out Greenhouse Juice Bar.
Yeah, we have like a greenhousela.com. You're not going to get anything from it. You might be able to look at a
You got to come in. You got to come in and see
there.
it. You got to come in and see
my
this place.
Instagram. You can kind of see me doing dumb shit, which is
That's
just
not a bad
Greenhouse
thing.
Juice Bar.
That's not
Yeah,
a
I mean,
bad
there's a little bit on there, but yeah, just come in and say hi. I would love talking to anybody.
Yeah.
That's what I live for. I love human connection. That's what I'm on this planet for.
That's good. Thanks a lot. So one of my favorite holidays is Easter. And not necessarily for its religious context. You do not have to be religious to understand the significance of Easter. Easter is about beauty's triumph over tragedy, life's triumph over death. And if there's anything I'm taking from this conversation, it's that no matter how low you are, no matter how high you are, that's not what it's about. It seems like it's about something else. It's about something that drives you, something that gives you purpose and meaning. And just because you don't always have the answers doesn't mean you're not always moving forward, doing something. Chris's energy and Chris's perspective and his experience really gave me chills. I mean, he said some things to me today that they're going to keep me thinking for a long time. And just like that girl who came up to me with scars on her arm, when we see people, we never know what's actually going on inside of them. The way he talked about suffering and the way he talked about getting through all of this and never really knowing what's going on. And it's really great to see somebody like him who's so accomplished, and yet he still doesn't think he's figured it out. There's a really unique kind of humility that he brings to the table. He never said he knew everything. He never said that he had figured it out, even though he's been to places, highs and lows. He's been everywhere. When I asked him to talk to somebody maybe who's been struggling with some things, he didn't have answers. I think that's great. Sometimes we have to live with the question. Sometimes we don't get answers to questions. Sometimes it's not about what we discover, it's about our willingness to discover it. And just like really listening, stepping into an unknown, stepping into uncertainty and stepping into that chaos and finding out what it's all about, getting some scars on our arms and still saying, I'm celebrating. This is Benjamin Mathis. This is a Heard podcast, honest conversations on what it means to be alive. I hope you'll subscribe and I hope you'll leave us a review. That's how we're going to get the word out. Now, next week I've got somebody and we're going to have an unbelievable conversation. I don't want to give away too much, but this will be a conversation you've never heard before. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next week.